Welcome to America's Fractured Politics. I'm your host, Mark Mansour. Today, we confront a subject that is both urgent and deeply rooted in American history: the cognitive and physical decline of presidents, the secrecy that often surrounds their health, and how Donald Trump's visible deterioration fits into and diverges from this legacy. We'll explore the medical, psychological, and political dimensions of presidential infirmity, drawing on expert testimony and historical precedent, to understand what's at stake for democracy when a leader's fitness is in question. From the 19th century to the present, American presidents have faced serious health crises, often at the worst possible moments. The instinct to conceal, minimize, or outright lie about these conditions is as old as the office itself. The reasons are clear. The presidency is a symbol of national strength, and any sign of weakness is seen as a threat to both political power and public confidence. Chester Arthur developed Bright's disease, chronic kidney failure, early in his presidency. His condition was kept secret, with the press told he was suffering from malaria. Only after leaving office did the truth emerge, and he died soon afterward. Theodore Roosevelt survived an assassination attempt during his 1912 campaign. Despite being shot, he insisted on delivering a speech before seeking medical attention, projecting vigor and resilience. Woodrow Wilson suffered multiple strokes, the most devastating in 1919, which left him paralyzed and cognitively impaired. His wife and physician concealed the extent of his disability, effectively running the executive branch in his stead. The public and even Congress were kept in the dark, creating a power vacuum at a critical moment in world history. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, paralyzed by polio, faced declining health in his later terms, especially severe heart disease, which was hidden from the public. His physicians lied to the press, and the FBI intimidated doctors who discussed his condition. He died of a massive stroke just months into his fourth term. Dwight Eisenhower suffered a heart attack and later a stroke while in office. Unlike his predecessors, Eisenhower's illness were more openly discussed, but he still took pains to appear robust, delaying his hospital discharge until he could walk out under his own power. Ronald Reagan showed signs of cognitive decline, later diagnosed as Alzheimer's disease, which were retrospectively identified in his speech patterns and diaries. During his second term, he showed increasing word-finding difficulties, spatial confusion, and repetitive speech, classic signs of early dementia. The ambiguity surrounding presidential incapacity led to the ratification of the 25th Amendment in 1967, clarifying the process for declaring a president unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. Yet even with this safeguard, political will to invoke it has always been lacking, as the stigma of incapacity and the fear of destabilizing the government remain powerful deterrents. Donald Trump's cognitive and behavioral changes have become a focal point for psychiatrists, neurologists, and rhetoric experts. Unlike past presidents, whose illnesses were often physical and concealed, Trump's decline is played out in public, on camera, and in real time. Dr. John Gartner, a psychologist and former faculty member at Johns Hopkins, has been particularly outspoken. He warned, "Donald Trump is showing clear, unmistakable signs of neurocognitive impairment. We're seeing the classic indicators of dementia, a marked deterioration from his earlier baseline, frequent word-finding difficulties, and a tendency to substitute nonsensical words for intended ones." On Trump's confusion between Harlem and Harvard, Dr. Gartner called it a textbook example of tangential thought and cognitive impairment. When you see someone repeatedly lose their train of thought or confabulate, meaning invent stories to fill memory gaps, you're looking at a serious cognitive problem. Dr. Harry Siegel of Cornell University said, "Trump has shown evidence of dementia for the past year, as indicated by his strange gait, phonemic paraphasia when he begins a word and can't finish it, and decline in the complexity of his words and concepts. This limited capacity explains his poor debate performance, but there are two more disturbing signs of his decline. First, he is avoiding events where he has to respond coherently and spontaneously. Second, he has become more impulsive, another sign of incipient dementia. Dr. Bandy Lee, a forensic psychiatrist formerly at Yale, has been even more direct. The pattern of cognitive decline is unmistakable. We see increasing incoherence, confusion, and impulsivity. These are red flags for anyone, but in a president, They are a national emergency. She adds, in Donald Trump, we have a frightening Venn diagram consisting of 3 circles. The first is extreme present hedonism, the second narcissism, and the third bullying behavior. These 3 circles overlap in the middle to create an impulsive, immature, incompetent person who, when in the position of ultimate power, easily slides into the role of a tyrant. Sound familiar? Dr. Lance Dotis, a retired Harvard Medical School psychiatrist and one of the first to publicly question Trump's mental health, says Trump's speech patterns have become more fragmented, his stories less coherent, and his ability to stay on topic has deteriorated. These are not just quirks or rhetorical choices, they are clinical symptoms. He continues, Trump has what we would call a psychotic core. It's not on the surface, but you see it. For example, when he insisted that he had the largest inauguration crowd in history. It doesn't matter that there is absolute evidence to the contrary. His need to believe it is essentially a delusion. This vulnerability to fall into a psychotic-like state is consistent with his lack of a conscience and lack of ability to care about others. These are all characteristics of very severe psychological impairment. Dr. Jennifer Mercieka, a rhetoric specialist, notes, his lack of concentration makes it appear as though he is experiencing cognitive decline, as if his mental faculties are not well regulated, preventing him from sustaining a coherent thought to a logical conclusion. His speeches are characterized by abrupt topic shifts and arbitrary associations. This isn't just a matter of style. It suggests a lack of mental discipline and executive function. The observable symptoms are numerous. Trump often begins a word and cannot finish it, or substitutes unrelated words, a symptom known as phonemic paraphasia. He invents stories or details to fill memory gaps, leading to rambling, incoherent narratives, what experts call confabulation. His speeches are marked by sudden, arbitrary changes in subject, making them difficult to follow. Observers have noted a change in Trump's gait, with a wider, unsteady walk and occasional leg dragging, signs consistent with certain types of dementia. Increasingly impulsive decisions, avoidance of unscripted events, and refusal to participate in debates or interviews that require spontaneous thought have also become apparent. Recently, he told the House Republican caucus that he didn't want to touch Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security in his budget bill. He had to be told by a member that Medicaid would be affected profoundly by the bill. Attendees said he looked and sounded surprised. The other symptoms are stark. As noted, earlier presidents suffered primarily from physical ailments, strokes, heart disease, while Trump's decline is primarily cognitive and behavioral, manifesting in public speech and decision-making. Trump's symptoms are visible in real time, thanks to modern media. Whereas past presidents could more easily hide or stage manage their infirmities, never before have so many mental health professionals publicly warned of a president's unfitness, citing a duty to warn the public. And while the 25th Amendment exists to address incapacity, as with Wilson and others, political will to invoke it remains absent. Despite mounting evidence and expert warnings, the mainstream media has largely avoided direct discussion of Trump's cognitive decline. Dr. Gardner observes, the media is intimidated by Trump. They avoid the topic out of fear, instead focusing on the cognitive health of his political rivals. It's a dereliction of duty. Dr. Lee adds, the press is failing in its responsibility to inform the public about a clear and present danger. This stands in stark contrast to the intense scrutiny applied to other public figures, especially Joe Biden, whose every verbal slip was dissected at length. The result is a public that is not being fully informed about the president's visible decline, leaving voters dangerously uninformed about the true state of his mental faculties. The stakes of presidential infirmity are not abstract. History shows that a president's health can have profound consequences for national security, governance, and the course of world events. Woodrow Wilson's post-stroke confusion and intransigence derailed the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations, with lasting global consequences. Franklin D. Roosevelt's declining health in his final months may have affected his judgment at the Yalta Conference, shaping the post-war world. Retrospective analysis suggests that Ronald Reagan's early Alzheimer's may have influenced his decision-making in his second term and beyond. Experts warn that Trump's impulsivity and confusion raise grave risks in matters of war and peace. Dr. Lee cautions, when a leader with cognitive impairment has access to the nuclear codes, the risk to global security is incalculable. Recent events, such as Trump's attack on Iran and erratic tariff policies, have prompted questions about whether these actions were the product of sound intelligence or the whims of a cognitively impaired leader. Yet few in the media or government have been willing to address the possibility that Trump's mental state played a role. The 25th Amendment was designed to address precisely the scenario of a president unable to fulfill the duties of office due to physical or mental incapacity. Dr. Gartner has said, the 25th Amendment was written for precisely this scenario, but political will is lacking. Even as Trump's symptoms have become more pronounced, the mechanisms for removal remain inert, stymied by partisanship and fear of political fallout. The chorus of psychiatric and psychological experts warning about Trump's mental state is unprecedented in American history. Their assessments are not casual observations, but the result of careful analysis of public behavior, speech, and decision-making. Dr. Bandy Lee says the level of danger is vastly increased, especially because the symptoms have spread. We can no longer wait for the next world war to prompt the creation of a new life-affirming world order. Now, scientists and healers of the human mind must step forward, she says. She adds, pathological narcissists can lose touch with reality in subtle ways that become extremely dangerous over time. When they can't let go of their need to be admired or recognized, they have to bend or invent a reality in which they remain special, despite all messages to the contrary. Dr. Lance Dotis says, Trump's overall mental condition is a psychotic-like state. He loses contact with the reality when his need for greatness is challenged. His need to believe in his own greatness is essentially a delusion. This vulnerability to fall into a psychotic-like state is inconsistent with his lack of conscience and a lack of ability to care about others. These are all characteristics of very severe psychological impairment. Dr. Gardner says, he stitches together this sort of confabulated narrative that connects his loose associations, leaving reporters visibly puzzled, and then they just move on to the next question as if we didn't just witness a clear example of a thought disorder. Dr. Murciaka says, his lack of focus makes it seem as though he's experiencing cognitive decline, that his brain is not well disciplined, and he's unable to sustain a coherent thought to a logical conclusion. While past presidents could hide their illnesses, today's media environment makes concealment more difficult, but not impossible. The instinct to minimize or deny remains strong, as does the reluctance of those in power to act on clear evidence of incapacity. The warnings of medical and psychiatric professionals have never been more urgent or more widely ignored. The Goldwater rule, which discourages psychiatrists from diagnosing public figures without examination, has been challenged by those who argue that the danger is too great to remain silent. Americans expect their leaders to be superhuman, but history shows that presidents are as vulnerable as anyone to illness and decline. Honest conversations about health and fitness for office are essential to a functioning democracy. The implications of ignoring presidential infirmity are profound. As Dr. Lee warns, a president in cognitive decline, shielded by a compliant media and surrounded by enablers, is a threat to our nation's stability. We deserve transparency about the mental fitness of our leaders, no matter who they are. What can be done? The public and the press must insist on regular, independent health assessments for all presidents and candidates. The 25th Amendment process must be strengthened, removing political obstacles to its invocation and ensuring that incapacity, physical or mental, can be addressed swiftly and objectively. When hundreds of mental health professionals raise the alarm, their warnings must be taken seriously, not dismissed as partisan attacks. Understanding the history of presidential health crises can help dispel the myth of the invulnerable leader and foster a more realistic, humane approach to governance. The story of presidential infirmity is as old as the Republic. What's new is the visibility of decline, the scale of expert alarm, and the stakes in an age of nuclear weapons and global crises. As citizens, we must demand honesty, accountability, and courage from our leaders, our media, and ourselves. Thanks for listening to America's Fractured Politics. I'm Mark Mansour. If you found this episode urgent, share it, talk about it, and demand accountability from the media and from Congress. Our democracy depends on it.